Welcome today to the next edition of the Rare Business podcast. It's been a while, but we have now today a bit of a coup because we have Joe Coulson of the CEO, no less, of the Institute of Customer Service with us today. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you very much, Adrian. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
So, Joe, tell us a bit about you and your work and what you do, etc.
Well, Adrian, the Institute of Customer Service is approximately 14 years old, and my mum always asked me what we do for a living, and we do three things. Firstly, we help organisations to improve their customer experience and their customer service through a whole range of products and services around qualifications, accreditation, benchmarking, but really help them to see what is excellence in terms of customer service by setting the standards and hopefully showing the way in terms of what excellence looks like. Secondly, we believe that customer service is a profession. It's not something that you do in your spare time, and therefore there is a career in customer service, and there are opportunities for people to progress and promote in terms of customer service. And then the third area is really trying to drive UK PLC, because obviously if you've got engaged people and excellence in terms of customer professionalism, you've got better performing organisations. If you've got better performing organisations, then you've got a better performing UK PLC. And to that point, 73% of the GDP in the UK is service orientated. So we need to be really good at this.
Excellent. So let me kick off with some of the questions that I have, and the first one I have is customer service, and in a way, sort of social customer service in particular, seems to be high on the agenda right now. Why do you think that is, and what is changing around us to drive that?
And I think the last 3 years have seen significant change, Adrian, in terms of the importance and the impact of customer service. And a number of reasons for that. One is the economic challenges, which we're obviously all facing at the moment. Secondly is the rise of consumer power, I would probably call it, which is obviously driven quite heavily by social media. Thirdly, we have less money in our pockets as consumers, and we are therefore more choosy and are more likely to express our concern or our dissatisfaction. So we become more demanding, which I think is a good thing, and we have more channels open to us now in order to be able to express our opinions and our feelings.
So just picking up on one of the points that you made around consumers or just customers in general being more discerning around what they buy and what they don't buy, but then also, does that mean that service is becoming a clear differentiator? And does that also kind of mean that people are looking for cheap as chips, as it were, but also really good service? Or is it that people are still willing to pay for service?
Okay, so three questions there.
Oh, sorry.
No problem, Adrian. So the first question, absolutely, I personally believe in the research that we've done at the Institute indicates to me that customer service is becoming the early differentiator or a key differentiator for organisations. And what I mean by that is that in the last few years, we've spent a lot of time stripping out cost. We've driven a lot of efficiencies through our organisations. So how do you really differentiate yourself as an organisation? That has to be on the service that you provide. I think in terms of consumers, yes, we want value for money. Of course we do. As we've already indicated, there's less money in our pockets, and therefore we are more discerning about how we spend our money. But actually, we want great service too. So I don't think that it's a situation where people expect great service at any cost, but we do want choice, and therefore there are a significant number of people that will pay for better service.
And I mean, does this apply? I mean, your answers can conjure up more questions from me. So my first question would be, does that mean, we've got a changing environment now? We've seen some fundamental changes in our environment over the last couple of years. I mean, the likes of which we haven't really experienced before. But does that mean that this reinvigoration or the rising up the agenda of customer services, do you think that's just a cyclical thing, or is it on the top of the agenda and it's here to stay?
Okay, personally for me, it's not a cyclical thing. I think that given the changes that have gone on, we're living in a very different world now. So be that through the technological changes, be that through the fact that consumers are now the watchdogs in terms of being able to give greater feedback and want to be far more engaged and want to collaborate and want to share their thoughts, their views, co-creation, etc. of product. So I think it is a very different world that we are living in. And it's funny, actually, Adrian, sometimes I'm old enough to have been around in the 1980s when we talked about customer is king. I actually believe we're going through a renaissance in customer service, and it's much deeper. It's absolutely those organisations that really understand how to align their business practices, their business strategies, and their customer service strategies will be the ones that are going to be here tomorrow and the year after and the year after that. So I do think it's a fundamental shift, and I don't think it's just a phase.
So that, I mean that creates some really big challenges. I mean, I think in terms of the nature of organization and how businesses have traditionally been structured in a way. I mean, it seems to me that Henry Ford and his production line approach is responsible for a huge amount, but is also responsible for creating very rigid businesses. But that seems to be one of the things that business is having to wrestle with, is that actually we need to be more flexible, a bit more nimble, a bit more customer focus, a bit more sort of have a bit bigger sort of personal touch, but yet we've set up a business which is quite rigid and process and system oriented. Would you agree with that?
I think I would absolutely agree with the fact that organisations need to be more nimble, need to be able to be far more agile in terms of responding. And it's interesting that you touch upon the structures of businesses, because I do believe as we go through, and in fact actually it's interesting, Adrian, we're about to do some research about the future of customer service, and one of the things that I expect potentially to come from that is a real challenge around how we structure our businesses, how we develop our people, because you and I as consumers don't enter into the marketing department, go to operations, back to the marketing department. We don't really need to see any of that. We expect a seamless journey throughout that organisation. And I do think that presents opportunities for organisations to really think about how they engage and at what point that they engage with the customer, and through that process of that journey, because as I said, you and I do not want to be answering the same questions through lots of different departments. And yes, that will have an impact, I believe, in the longer term on how organisations structure or certainly share and use their information, because ultimately inside an organisation we all serve a customer, whether that's an internal customer or an external customer.
Sure. So if I was a CEO of an organisation, and I'm thinking I see the world around me and it's changing, and I decide that I want to put the customer right at the very heart of my organisation. I want to create a customer centric organisation, and to build my, if you like, fitness for the longer term. Where does it start? I mean, does it start at board level, my office, or does it start in individual efforts in different departments?
I think it absolutely has to be in the boardroom, in terms of really aligning your vision and strategy for your business with your customer service strategy. And then it also needs to be up, down, across the whole organisation. So that means that we need to think about how have we genuinely empowered, and I know empowerment's an overused word, but how have we enabled our people within the organisation to make the right judgment calls, to give them the right tools, processes, etc., opportunity and imagination to do the right thing within the very clear guidelines of how the business operates. So it does start in the boardroom, but it needs to be at every level and across horizontal and vertical. And we need to be able to make sure as boards that we are really picking up and understanding and hearing what our people are saying, because for me, Adrian, that links very critically to, we know, and our own research at the Institute knows, that where you have engaged employees, genuinely engaged employees, you tend to have a higher level of satisfaction in terms of the customer too. So customer satisfaction will be higher. Because it's natural, isn't it? It's natural that you and I, if we know that we are able to do the right thing by both the business and the customer, and we're empowered and enabled and given the right opportunities to make those judgment calls, we will make them.
Yes, indeed. I mean, you sort of just stolen a march on my next question, because that was about engagement, and it seems to me that you talked about up and down and across the organisation, and it seems to me that I did a piece of work recently, which was about with a firm, and they asked me to come along and talk to them about customer engagement, but also employee engagement, and how they could make that, if you like, square the circle and connect the two of them, and because it spoke to, if you like, more of a siloed approach, and how breaking down silos is absolutely essential if you're going to pursue this path. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely, I would agree with it. For me, it touches back to where we started the conversation, really, Adrian, in terms of structures. For an organisation to really grow and to prosper, then very clear linkages and understanding between departments is absolutely critical. How does the finance department impact on the customer service front end part of that team? So actions and activities that I might be doing in one part of the business clearly have a cause and effect in another part. And understanding that and understanding what our roles are, how we play to the overall goals of the organisation is absolutely critical. So reducing silo mentality, giving people clear and accountable, and holding them to account, because that's important, but clear and accountable objectives, and allowing them to be innovative in their approach is all going to be important going forward.
I mean, that's great. I mean, going back to the engagement piece and sort of particularly employee engagement, it strikes me that that particularly in larger organisations, having worked for a few, that there's a lot of, I don't know. I mean, sometimes we can talk about empowerment or enablement and things, and I see examples of that, and it just feels like it's another change management initiative,
Yeah.
which I don't want to be sort of put a downer on it, because I think it's, I applaud the motivation to do it, but I sometimes think that another initiative can be tiresome for employees.
Absolutely, and there is a principle of, if I keep my head down, this initiative will pass me by.
Yes.
So I do understand that. So for me, it's not about an initiative, it's about the way we do business. It's about the way we do things around here. So that goes to the heart of what is our culture, how do we reward our people, how do we recognise and celebrate success, how do we genuinely capture people's views, how do we communicate the direction. So for me, it's about the leadership and how we listen to our people and how we also explain. There are some things that organisations aren't able to do, but rather than ignoring that, we need to explain that to our people. We need to help them to understand how we're taking things forward in an organisation and why we are doing that. I mean, one organisation which I think is superbly good at this is LV, and if you've ever heard Mike Rogers speak, it is really interesting because a lot of what they do is in a regulated environment, so there are things which they have to pursue, but they also allow for appropriate freedom for their people to be able to make the right choice and make the right decision. And that's always the balance, and that's why it comes down to me about leadership, of how do you get the best out of your people. You get the best out of the people by being very clear about the direction of travel for the organisation, being very clear about how you want to fulfil that proposition and your brand, and being very clear about how you want to support your customers, but inviting people to really consider, in my role, in my job, what part do I have in really playing, bringing that to life for an organisation. And for me, it's easy to say, but that's the things that will make the difference. And sometimes when we're motoring so hard in terms of delivering the day-to-day, we sometimes forget to lift our heads to understand, where tomorrow we want to be. And it's the job of the leadership team to be able to keep an eye on tomorrow and also ensure that we deliver for the day.
I think that's fair. I mean, I always find it sort of slightly frustrating when I see people going to work. I call it the Jekyll and Hyde syndrome, and how they are customers, they are consumers in their everyday life, but then they cross the threshold, as it were, and then there's a whole new set of sort of behaviours and values and actions that seems to get played out, and it's directly related to culture and what people think is expected of them. But I think there's also I'm sure you're familiar with it. There's an interesting sort of piece of research, or ongoing research, that comes out of Gallup about employee engagement and the impact it has on top line, bottom line, overall productivity, etc., etc. And they say one of the biggest factors in employee engagement is somebody's direct line manager or supervisor or team leader. For me, that implies that, crikey, that means there's a whole heap of work that needs to get done.
Yes, and I think it goes back to our points of, there is a board responsibility, and this is set and the vision is set in the board, but there is an accountability and a responsibility at all levels within an organisation. And going back to the social media piece, and I would agree with you, Adrian, people don't, you don't become somebody else when you walk into work. And it's a very important point that we are all consumers. So what frustrates us in our as a consumer, keeping that in our heads so that when we are fulfilling our daily business roles and understanding that, so always having an inquiring mind and being open to, why do we do it like that? What could make this easier? What has become process? And what is, because you need process in an organisation, of course.
Yes.
So what has become routine, and what actually do we need to inject and think, actually there's a better way. There's a better way of doing this, both for the organisation and the customer. And I think keeping that, I call it outside in sort of approach, about always constantly thinking outside, thinking about the external environment, thinking about the customer, helps us, I believe, to try and stay fresh with this and challenge our own thinking. And that's what we need to encourage our people to do. And not, making mistakes is an important part of anyone's learning. And therefore, what do we learn from the mistakes that we make and really try to improve upon those. So a key part of the customer service experience is about the culture that we develop. And in the Institute, we believe very firmly that where you align your strategy, your people, and your processes, that's where you will get the best customer experience, which goes to the heart, really, Adrian, of all the things we've been talking about.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's it's almost interesting that, it is interesting that the social media side of things and how social media is becoming an additional channel for many organizations and how it delivers its customer service is one thing, but then there's a whole social media sphere where it's like when companies make mistakes, it becomes a cathedral of noise in a way. And I think it goes back to that point you made before, is that there's a fundamental change in our environment that culturally and personally and collectively we have to understand as organizations that yes, there will be times that we do make mistakes, and there is a possibility that will echo around for some time.
The likelihood.
Yes, indeed, and it's a case of you cannot necessarily change that reality. Yeah. You can choose how you want to play, but you've got to realise that the reality has changed.
And I think that's a really important point. And for me, it's about how do we deal with that.
Yes.
So, going back again to, our research and our UK CSI research, there are 5 key areas which we know are customer priorities or consumer and customer priorities. And one of those is the whole area of problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is a problem, how well equipped is the organisation to deal with that problem? How engaged as a customer did I feel? Was I listened to? Maybe actually the outcome that I finally got wasn't the outcome that I originally wanted. But if I feel that I've been dealt with professionally, I've been listened to, someone has explained and gone through, and had a conversation with me,
Yeah.
then I'm much more likely to respond positively than someone saying the computer says no, or my script doesn't enable me to do this.
Yes.
And that's back to your point about the human interaction, because, we are all human, and as we said, mistakes happen. But how an organisation deals with that, and how promptly and effectively, because one of the other key measures in terms of customer satisfaction is around timeliness.
Mm-hmm.
The other one's around professionalism, around product quality and efficiency and effectiveness. But undoubtedly, one of the key ones is absolutely around problem solving and how was I dealt with. And again, Adrian, we've touched on this slightly. This is about the emotional engagement.
Yes.
It's not about, which is why I think there's a big shift here, because I kind of expect my product to work.
Yes.
I bought this product because, it's been advised to me as the best product. What I want in addition to that is someone to help me through and feel engaged and excited and positive about what I'm going to do with this product or service.
Mm.
And that's the added bit. How do organisations, for me, getting the right product, getting the right service experience, I kind of expect. But what I want in addition to that is to feel that someone has engaged with me through that process. Which leads me on to another point, if I may.
Of course.
Often people say to me, well, about social media, but for me it's about the mix of the channels.
Yes.
And being able to respond appropriately in the way that I want to be responded to. So absolutely there is a critical role for self-service. It's 12 o'clock at night, I don't mind phoning and going through the buttons on the machine because I don't need to actually speak to somebody because a very simple query that I've got, I just want to check my bank balance or whatever. If I want to talk about something that's far more complex, then I may actually need to have a face-to-face conversation with someone. And then I want them to be knowledgeable, listen to me, and give me advice and good opinion. And I think it's about understanding that at different stages for different products and services, we as consumers need different things, and the channels that we use have to be able to respond to that. The big thing for me is about aligning that. So I don't want to pick up the phone and have to repeat all my details, as we were saying right at the beginning. What I want to be able to do is someone to be able to say, oh yes, Joe, I spoke to you last week, or you spoke to Lucy last week, or I see that you changed this last week. And that's where the technology makes that happen.
Absolutely. It just seems to me that what's quite interesting is that the idea that delight is a relative term.
Well, yeah, and I guess, it goes back to what you were saying about employee engagement. I think there's a couple of things with this. This is about understanding need. And at different times, I have a different need. Sometimes, actually, I need to feel far more engaged in that process. Mm-hmm. Other times, I need a quick response.
Yes.
And it's about our ability as organisations to be able to pick up on the nuances, as we were saying, for what is required at that particular time. And that involves a higher level of emotional intelligence or engagement.
Absolutely. So, Joe, just in the interest of time, if I was to put you on, not too much on the spot, but if I was to say that these issues are issues that affect businesses both large and small. Mm-hmm. What things in your travels that have you seen that you think actually these are probably some quick wins that I wish I could see more companies doing? What would you say? Maybe top 1, 2, 3 things.
I'm not sure that they're quick wins. But
well, quickish.
Yeah, okay, they're important points. One, engagement of the board.
Right.
in terms of having a board that really understands what customer-centric actually means and how they align their communication strategies. So that's absolutely critical. Secondly, about how we recognise, reward and engage our staff. So that's about what reward mechanisms, how we recruit our staff, how we think about what we want our people to be delivering. And thirdly, for me, is obviously the alignment of all of those. Now, those are quite big things in terms of strategy, people, and processes. Quick wins would be, talk to your team.
Yes.
Listen to what your customers are actually saying. People collect a lot of customer satisfaction feedback. We all collect a lot of employee engagement feedback. For me, go and look at the alignment of those two, and very quickly you'll see where your key hotspots are. We do something called ServCheck, and ServCheck is designed to ask people within an organisation how well they think they're doing at delivering customer service. And when you look at that, there'll be 2 or 3 kind of key areas that you think, actually, if we can just shape that or amend that a little bit in this particular focus, then actually we'll drive significant change. So for me, it's having a big picture, but chunking the elephant down in lumps, if you like, enabling us to sort of focus on what's the critical areas. And you can do that by looking at your customer SAT data and your employee engagement data, because there'll be a correlation, I am sure.
Fantastic. So the one final question I always like to end these conversations with is there anything that you would like to shamelessly plug?
I guess for me, this really matters, and hopefully, Adrian, I've conveyed this. So this really matters, and we started the conversation about why does it matter? Well, it matters because if organisations are focusing on this, then they will have happier people. If we've got happier people, we've got happier customers. If we've got happier customers, then we will get growth.
Yep.
Because there'll be greater confidence in the UK. And there's many things in the UK that we can be really proud about, and service should be one of those. And again, the only thing I would plug is that the Institute does the UK CSI, which is a survey of 26,000 consumers over a year. And let's not be too negative. What we're actually seeing in the last 3 years, because that gives me a lot of trend data, because it covers 13 different industry sectors, we're seeing the levels of satisfaction increase. And that's great, that's really good, but there's no room for complacency. So there's an opportunity, I think, for the UK to be really great at this and to really set ourselves apart as a destination, and therefore real focus on customer services is our future, I believe.
Fantastic. Joe, I just wanted to say before I stop recording is thank you so much for your time. I mean, your insights, that's tremendous. And I look forward to getting some feedback from the readers of the blog around some of your insights.
Thank you very much, Adrian. I really appreciate you taking the trouble to speak this afternoon.
You're very welcome. Thank you.